Moving on to the Western Conference, Guard. Now, this is where it gets a lot more interesting. These divisions are way closer than the Eastern divisions, Garth, where all three of the top teams in each division, are comfortably ahead of the wildcard teams, but absolutely nothing is settled in these divisional races. So we'll start in the Central. We got Dallas with 89 points in 70 games played. Colorado is 1 point behind them with one game in hand. Look at that, Garth. Like we've been saying for months. Once Colorado gets some guys back with the talent they have, they weren't even in the playoff picture for a good amount of the season. Now, what do you know? They're 1 win away from leading their division. And then Minnesota with 88 points in 70 games played. All of these teams, Garth, by the way, red hot. Dallas is 7-3-0 in their last 10. Get this, Garth. Colorado 7-2-1. They've won 6 in a row. And Minnesota 7-1-2. So, I mean, when the worst record from that top three in the last 10 is 7-3-0, you know these teams are doing something right. They all can score the puck very well. But what I'm most impressed about, Garth, their defenses are really good. I mean, we've talked about how great Georgiev has been, a very big surprise for the Avalanche. We all know what our guy Otter on Dallas can do. And the Minnesota Gustafsson has had some really good moments this year as well. But, where are you leaning, Garth, in this division? Who do you think wins it? Because, me personally, McKinnon, McCarr, all the guys that the Avalanche have, I love what these other teams are doing. I think Robertson's a superstar. Obviously, we all know what Kaprizov can do with Minnesota. These are all really talented teams, but I got to give benefit of the doubt to the Avalanche on this one.
Yeah, you couldn't have said it better. I'm rolling with Colorado here. Like you said, they're red hot right now. Georgiev has been phenomenal in goal. They're starting to get healthy. Most importantly, that blue line, they've had injuries across the board, but that defensive unit has been absolutely decimated this season by injury. So they're starting to get those guys back. We're actually seeing the Colorado Avalanche for once this season because, the team that they were earlier in the season with multiple guys out to injury, maybe a little bit of a championship hangover too, the end of the season, you might not be as motivated because you just won the cup and, the next postseason is still kind of on the back burner for you. But they're healthy, playoffs is right around the corner. I think that they're like, all right, guys, it's time to get this thing going. We've got a title to defend, and they're just on another level right now, playing really good across the board. And that's in no way throwing shade at either Dallas or Minnesota because they've both played phenomenal as well. But of the three, I definitely got to give the benefit of the doubt to Colorado.
Yeah, I'm with you, but very interesting race in that one. We're not going to spend as much time in the West because, like we said, I mean, these divisions, they're very close, but like the wildcard teams aren't even close to catching these guys. Like the closest in the Pacific is 5 points back. They do have 2 games in hand, so we'll see about that. But Winnipeg in the Central, they're 7 games back. They have extra games played. So it's really between this top 3, and I agree with Garth. I think the Avalanche will get it done. Ray says, we all know Bedard is going to Arizona. Well, I'll tell you what, Ray, that would be absolutely terrible for the NHL if a generational talent like that went to that market with their crappy college arena. You want something great for the NHL, get Connor Bedard to the Montreal Canadiens. That would be absolutely insane.
Absolutely. That's what I want as just a general hockey fan.
Ray says, I got to take off, guys. Have a great rest of the show. Thank you very much for showing up, Ray. Blowing up the comments, as usual. But moving on to the next and final division, Garth, we're going to talk about the Pacific briefly. Now, this one is interesting because it looked like earlier in the season that Vegas was just going to take off and run away with it. But that hasn't been the case. They have the same amount of points as the Kings with a game in hand. The Oilers are also 4 points behind them. But, I mean, it's just very close. I mean, we all know what the Oilers can do. They score four goals per game. They got McDavid and Draisaitl. But their defense ain't great. LA, very young team on the up and coming. Their stats are kind of in the middle. And then Vegas, a very good defensive team, it looks like. And obviously they can still score as well. Once again, Garth, this is ridiculous. The last 10 for these 3 teams. Vegas is 8-2-0. LA is 8-0-2. They have not lost in regulation. And Edmonton is 8-2-0 as well, and they've won 4 in a row. I mean, these top teams in the Western Conference, Garth, are just taking off. And, hats off to them because I know we've done a lot of talk about the Eastern Conference here. Oh, my God, it's so loaded and whatnot. And it is. But the top teams in the West have really started to take off lately. What's your read on this specific, though? Because I think this one's a lot harder to decide than it is with the Central.
Yeah, this one's tough, honestly, because all three of these teams are really good. They're playing really well over their last 10. If it were earlier in the season, and honestly, not even that long ago, I would probably go with Vegas without a shadow of a place. But with the Kings, since the trade deadline, they have led the NHL in save percentage as well as expected goals against. That goalie tandem is red hot there in LA. Edmonton, it's
Mm-hmm.
like Connor McDavid's been phenomenal all season, but now the rest of the team is deciding to play. They're like, hey guys, playoffs are almost here. We better actually get our act together and learn how to play hockey again. This one is honestly really a toss up for me. If I had to pick one to end up winning the Pacific, I think I probably would slightly lean towards the Kings just because of how good their goaltending situation has been. Edmonton all year, it's been bad, and they really necessarily haven't been playing like all of a sudden really good lately. They've just been playing good enough to help the team get on a streak. Vegas goaltending it has been solid, no doubt,
Mm-hmm.
but definitely not as good as what the LA Kings have been since the trade deadline. So I think I'm going to roll ever so slightly with the Kings, the hot hand there in goal for them. I'll go Kings to edge this one out, Noah.
It's a tough call. I mean, like you said, the Kings have been the hottest team. Their goaltending has been terrific. Corpusal looked like a really good addition coming back for them in that quick trade. Edmonton, I just can't see it. I mean, Jack Campbell has just not been good this year at all. I know they have an incredible offense, but I mean, it's just the same thing with them as always. Their defense is very hit or miss. Like we said on our last show, I did love that Ekholm trade, but we'll see what happens with that. I'm probably going to give a slight edge to Vegas just because of their experience. I hope I'm wrong. I hope you're right. I want the Kings to win the division. It's just I don't know. I mean, Vegas has much more experience. I mean, it's not like their goaltending is bad by any means. I mean, they had the best goals against in this division, so they're clearly doing something right. Their defense is solid. I know their goalies have been banged up, but they still kept winning most of the year. Um, we'll see what happens, but now that we picked those two teams, that means the Oilers will probably win the division because that's just how it goes with our predictions sometimes. But moving on to the wild card, this is an interesting one, Garth. This one's not as tight as the Eastern Conference wildcard race, but it is still pretty close. So Seattle, who was in a divisional playoff spot for most of the year, but because the other team just absolutely took off. I mean, it's not like Seattle's fallen off the face of the cliff. They're still 38, 24, and 7. They're 6-3-1 in their last 10. But, I mean, unless they win those games in hand, they're quickly falling out of the divisional playoff race. Winnipeg kind of flown under the radar most of the year. Another team once again was in a divisional playoff spot most of the year, but then Colorado, got their guys back and they went on a tear. So they're now in a wild card spot as well. They're 4-5-1 in the last 10, which is a bit more concerning. And the last team I think we're going to discuss, because let's be honest, Garth, I know Nashville's right there, but they sold their entire team. Like, they're clearly in rebuilding mode. I know the record doesn't show it, but I think they're going to quickly fall off. I mean, I think that Rangers game we saw where they scored like 6 goals on 7 shots, I think that's going to happen a lot to the Preds coming up. But the Flames, they're a very interesting team. They're kind of like the Panthers, Garth, where we've talked about all season how they've been struggling. They can't quite get it going. And even their last 10, they're 4-4-2. And yet they still have a chance, Garth. They're 4 points back of the Winnipeg Jets. They're probably the last team that the lowest team in the Western Conference, I think, has any legitimate playoff shot left. And I think a major reason for that, Garth, is 15 overtime losses. This is a team that does not lose in regulation. So, it'd be granted, it'd be a lot better for them if they could actually win in overtime a little bit or win in a shootout. But regardless, at least they can get those extra points, which help to add up. Because, I mean, if they only had 31 regulation wins and not that many OT losses, they'd be down with teams like St. Louis and Vancouver, who obviously are nowhere even close. So what do you think about this wild card race, Garth? Because to be honest, I was really high on Calgary in preseason, but I don't know, man. I think it's just really tough. I think Hellebuck is a stud, obviously. I just don't see him catching them. I hope I'm wrong because I do really like Calgary and, I like some of the players they have, but, like, I'm sorry, like if it's a choice between Jacob Markstrom or Connor Hellebuck, I got to give Hellebuck the edge on this one.
Yeah, can Calgary get hot and sneak in? Possibly. Would I bet on it or count on it? I don't think so. It's just it's been one of those years where, nothing really has gone right for them. They haven't been as good offensively as I personally would have expected, bringing in a guy like Huberdeau, who just came off the best season of his career. He just really hasn't got it
Hmm.
figured out there in Calgary yet this year. And then, you talk about the goaltending situation, Jacob Markstrom. He was just in the running for the Vezina last season, and this year he has been
Not good.
bad,
Yeah.
bad. I'll put it lightly. So it's just like this team really doesn't have a lot going for it in terms of you can hang your hat on. Okay, they do this well. But like you said, I guess maybe the one thing you can give them is they don't take regulation losses. But I think it's most likely going to be Seattle and Winnipeg. I don't give Nashville any chance here because somehow they're there, but
Somehow.
I would not say they're a good team because, like you said, they traded away most of their key guys. Looks like they're getting ready for a rebuild, unfortunately, for any Nashville fans that might be tuning in. And Seattle, especially, have been consistently a good squad all year. Even if they've overperformed a little bit and kind of exceeded expectations, there's no doubt they've been good all year long. So I don't
Hmm.
expect them to just randomly fall off of a cliff for anything. And then one thing that's really, really shocking to me because it's the Winnipeg Jets after all. You look at that home record, that's actually one of the better home records in the entire NHL. So clearly they can win games at home. And with a guy like Hellebuck in goal, there's a lot of times where he can actually steal you games. So I don't know which order those two teams will end up finishing in. It could go either way, but I do think that Seattle and Winnipeg will be the two wild cards there in the Western Conference.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think the thing with Nashville, and look, I don't know if Mike is still here, but Mike, your Sabres, man, down 2-0 the Preds. I mean, when it rains, it pours, right? But yeah, I mean, clearly the Predators sold. Like they trade away Nina Ryder, Ekholm's gone now. They trade away Janot, obviously to your Lightning as well. For younger players, good old Cal Foot going back the other way. But yeah, I think they're a team that's trying to sell off because I think they finally realized that look they have some really good players here and there. Like obviously Roman Yossi's a stud. Johansson's pretty solid. Duchesne was a 40-goal scorer last year. They just don't have enough though. So I do think they're selling off, and I do think that they will go on a pretty decent losing streak towards the end of the year. Um, but I will say one thing about Predators, Garth. One guy to keep prospect to keep an eye on. Oh God, I can't remember his first name, but Askarov, really solid goaltending prospect for the Preds. He was the 11th overall pick a few years ago. I think the highest goaltender ever drafted. So that's a guy to definitely keep an eye out for. But regardless, that's going to do it for our little quick playoff discussion here, Garth.